My name's Michelle Hackbarth, and I was diagnosed in 2001, a month before my 51st birthday. And in my family, my cousin had died in 1994 after 6 months of being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when he was 48. But we really didn't know that much about it then, and I never had any idea that I could possibly have that. I'd been very tired for what seemed like years, and every time I would go to my thyroid doctor, I'd ask to be tested for some new disease like mono or all these different things. But when I was finally diagnosed, we went to many different doctors. My husband prodded me, I felt like a cow, to another doctor, another oncologist, and we finally miraculously ended up with Dr. Reber through a friend who lived in another state, and I've lived very close to here. He opened me up and closed me back up. I didn't know why he was going to open me up in the first place because I possibly had vein involvement. And I thought, why should I go through all that? But he said, you know, if there's a chance, you've got to put you through it. And of course, we went through it and it was not operable. Fortunately for me, I was on a chemo regimen, which probably is not even being used anymore, but I was on Xeloda, which is a 5-FU, and what is Celebrex? No, I was on Celebrex as an extra thing, and Gemzar. And actually after a month and a half after having the attempted surgery and being on the chemo for a month and a half, I was hospitalized. I was so sick, but the tumor had shrunk from the size of an orange to a grape in about 6 weeks. So we continued on with chemo, and I became very competitive, and I wanted to be the fastest person to ever get back and go back in for surgery. So every time I'd go see Dr. Reber, I'd always be so disappointed because he'd say no. But I found out later on, he said no, but he didn't tell me then, is because he thought if it's working, he wanted to keep you on the chemo as long as it's working. And if it stopped working, then he might have attempted the surgery. So about, I don't know, it was how many months afterwards, but I ended up having chemotherapy and radiation, which is when I was absolutely the most tired, and it was the most difficult for me. I think that I actually slept 17 hours a day, and I only stayed up because on the chemo that you take, you have to move around after you take it for at least a half hour. You're not allowed to go back to sleep. So, but I really felt that there was a war going on in my body, and that was fortunately for me at that point in my life. Our youngest was just graduating from high school. That was my whole purpose in life, was to battle this and fight this war. So after a year, well, actually it looked like the tumor might have actually shrunk away totally. And so then it was whether or not I should go back in. And again, more opinions, you know, and finally Dr. Reber said to me, he said, you know, and maybe he says this to everybody, but I don't know. He said, you seem like the type of person that if you don't have the surgery and it comes back, you're going to say, I should have had the surgery. He goes, but if you have the surgery and it comes back, you know you had done everything you possibly could. So, of course, you did too. That's my friend said, he's a surgeon, he wants to do the surgery. So anyway, I had the surgery, and I think it was gone, but they removed the part of the pancreas where it had been. And I did have complications. I was one of the few that, or 25% I think is that now, had the gastric delay syndrome, dropping syndrome, whatever it's called. And I had TPR, I don't know what it's called, something where you have an IV to feed you. Didn't lose any weight with that though. Anyway, and then I wanted to go back on chemo again, but at that point I'd had so much that I couldn't tolerate the high dosages, so I stayed on just the 5-FU, 2 pills or 4 pills a day for almost 2 years, which some people say I probably shouldn't have done, but I was afraid to go off. And then I eventually went off of it, and now it's, 13 years later, gained back every pound that Dr. Boasberg said Dr. Reber said I wouldn't. I did, and I'm very healthy, and I'm having a very good quality of life.